Picture this. You are standing at the edge of the Nile just before dawn. The water is calm. Too calm. Mist clings to the surface like breath that refuses to leave the living world. Behind you, no crowd cheers. No executioner announces your crime. There is only silence, and the sound of ropes tightening around your wrists. In ancient Egypt, justice rarely needed witnesses, because punishment was never meant to end with death. It was meant to follow you forever. Ancient Egypt did not see crime the way we do. To steal was not merely theft. To lie was not simply dishonesty. To betray was not personal. Every wrongdoing was believed to fracture something far greater, the balance of the universe itself. The Egyptians called this balance Ma'at. Ma'at was order, truth, harmony, the invisible force that kept the sun rising and the Nile flooding on time. And when someone broke Ma'at, punishment was not optional. It was necessary. To a lot of us, death is final. To the Egyptians, death was only a doorway. What mattered was what came after. Your body had to remain intact. Your name had to be spoken. Your memory had to survive. Without these, your soul, your Ka and Ba would wander, starve, and eventually vanish. And this is where Egyptian punishment became truly terrifying. Because the state learned something early. If you control the afterlife, you control fear itself. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always a beautiful thing to share history with you, and we would love to read your thoughts on our videos. Now, back to ancient Egypt. Erasing a person from reality was a sentence more feared than execution. It did not spill blood. It did not require chains. It required stone chisels. When a person was condemned to erasure, scribes were dispatched, not soldiers. Names were hacked off temple walls. Faces were scratched from reliefs. Statues were smashed at the neck. Even tomb inscriptions were violated. To the Egyptians, your name was your anchor to eternity. Erase it, and you never existed. To understand this, you've to think like an ancient Egyptian who believes in the afterlife. Now imagine dying, only to awaken in the afterlife and realize no one can call you. No offerings, no prayers, no voice, just endless fading. This punishment was not symbolic. It was spiritual murder. Let's take, for example, an historical account of Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut ruled Egypt peacefully and successfully. Trade flourished. Monuments rose. The kingdom was stable. But after her death, something strange happened. Years after her burial, something began to happen inside her temples. At Deir el-Bahri, workers returned not to build, but to destroy. Stone chisels rose and fell against her name. Cartouches were cracked open. Her face was scratched from reliefs. Her statues broken at the neck and buried in pits. No decree survives. No confession. Only the damage systematic, deliberate, and final. Who ordered it remains unrecorded, but it happened under her successor Thutmose III's reign, though without a surviving written order. Her statues were shattered. Her name was carved out of history. For centuries, she was gone. Not dead. Erased. And that erasure wasn't anger. It was punishment, though we've no account of the crime she committed aside from being a pharaoh. Nevertheless, some crimes were too severe for memory alone. Some offenses demanded blood, or worse. For those, the Nile waited. The Nile was life. It was also death. Crocodiles ruled its waters. Creatures worshipped, feared, and revered as manifestations of Sobek, the crocodile god. When someone committed crimes against temples, priests, or the divine order, they were not always killed by men. They were returned to the gods. Bound criminals were marched to the riverbanks. No last words. No prayers. Just a push. Greek historian Diodorus Siculus records executions where criminals were thrown alive into the Nile, their bodies torn apart before they could even scream. To be eaten meant no burial, no mummification, no resurrection. The gods themselves had rejected you. Yet even crocodiles were not enough for certain crimes. Some acts were considered so poisonous to Ma'at that the soul had to be completely destroyed. For those crimes, fire was chosen. Burning alive was rare in Egypt, not because it was cruel, but because it was absolute. Fire reduced bone to ash. Ash could not be preserved. Ash could not rise again. During the reign of Ramses III, conspirators within his own household plotted assassination. When discovered, the punishment was recorded carefully. Some were executed. Others were burned. Their fate was documented not to remember them, but to warn the future. To burn was to say, "You will never walk this world again, or the next." Now, not every punishment from ancient Egypt was designed to kill a person immediately. Some were designed to let the condemned live long enough to regret it. In ancient Egypt, the body was sacred, so damaging it publicly was one of the greatest humiliations imaginable. Officials caught taking bribes, scribes caught falsifying records, messengers who altered royal orders. Their punishment? Mutilation. Noses were cut off, ears severed, tongues removed, not randomly, symbolically. A liar lost his tongue. A man who refused to hear the law lost his ears. You were allowed to live, but you would never forget, and neither would anyone else. If mutilation was a warning, forced labor was a sentence, not of years, but of exhaustion. Egypt's monuments were not built by criminals alone, but criminals filled the harshest camps. Gold mines in Nubia, stone quarries in the desert. The Turin judicial papyrus records sentences where disgraced officials were sent away, never to return. No ceremony, no execution, just disappearance. Heat, hunger, beatings. Death arrived quietly and conveniently. Ancient Egypt understood something chilling. That fear doesn't come from pain alone. It comes from what happens after. When the body dies, when the name fades, when memory collapses, what's left? In their world, punishment didn't end life. It ended existence. Not every crime deserved erasure. Not every offender was worth feeding to the Nile. Some needed to be seen. Public beatings were among the most common punishments in Egypt, especially during the Middle and New Kingdom periods. We know this not from rumor, but from administrative papyri, court records, and tomb inscriptions. A man convicted of theft, a farmer who withheld grain taxes, a laborer who disobeyed orders. They were stripped, tied to wooden frames or posts, and beaten not once, not twice, but dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. There was no cheering crowd, only witnesses. The sound of rods striking flesh, the rhythm of screams breaking into silence. Egyptian records coldly list punishments like 100 blows and 5 wounds. This was not exaggeration. Many victims did not survive, and those who did carried scars for life, visible proof that Ma'at had been restored through their suffering. Pain was personal, but humiliation was communal, and the Egyptians understood that nothing polices a society better than watching someone else break. Which brings us to a punishment that did not require blood at all, only disgrace. In ancient Egypt, status was everything. Your clothing, your posture, your proximity to power. To remove rank was to remove identity. Corrupt officials, failed governors, or disloyal scribes were sometimes punished not by death, but by demotion so severe it erased their former lives. A man who once commanded others might be reassigned to manual labor, a priest reduced to hauling stone, a scribe forced to work fields under supervision. This was intentional. The punishment whispered, "You were once something, now you are nothing." And because Egypt believed identity extended beyond death, this humiliation followed the soul. But sometimes, the accused stood too close to the throne, too powerful, too well connected. Executing or punishing them publicly would destabilize the illusion of harmony. So Egypt devised a quieter solution: suicide by command. This was the punishment of the elite. When high-ranking officials conspired, betrayed trust, or embarrassed the pharaoh, the state sometimes avoided public trials. Instead, the offender was ordered to take their own life. This preserved appearances. No public outrage, no spectacle, no visible disorder. Yet make no mistake, this was not mercy. Families lost honor. Names were quietly removed from records. Burial rites were denied or reduced. The message was clear: you may choose how you die, but not whether you are forgotten. All of this, every punishment flowed from one source: The pharaoh. He was not merely king. He was divine order in human form.